Hi everyone, this is Tim. Welcome to North and South Podcasts. This is going to be a politics podcast, and it's my honour to be speaking to Councillor Brennan. Do you prefer Bobby? Yeah. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Obviously, it's Councillor Robert Brennan, but I've been known as Bobby since I was a child. I've only got Robert when I've done something wrong. So Councillor Bobby Brennan's fine.
Cool. And you live quite close to me without giving away too many details, but I've known Bobby for years as well, through the Labour Party and also as someone in the community. Now, we are both members of the Labour Party, I think, aren't we, Bob? Or we're still members of the Labour Party, aren't we? Yeah. So, just to declare our interests there when we discuss certain political issues during this podcast, I do like to think of myself as objective when I'm on this podcast, but I think you're all probably aware of my political persuasions at times. So, as you know, I talk about different themes. If you can support the podcast in any way, share and contribute, and that's great. But we'll get straight down to business today. So, Bobby, how long have you been a councillor in Bootle?
I was first elected as a councillor in 1994, so you're looking at 28.6 years.
28.6 years. So you've seen quite a bit in that time, haven't you?
Yeah, when I was first elected, it was for the old Orrell ward, and Netherton Orrell ward came as a result of boundary changes in 2010, where they decided to remove a ward in Bootle because the electorate didn't match the numbers of the wards. So I represented the old Orrell wards, which was great because it was the area where I was actually born, King Avenue in Orrell. And then when the boundary changes came, we wanted to keep the name of Orrell. So we brought Netherton Orrell because a lot of it covers the old Orrell wards. So to represent Netherton Orrell was, again, born in King Avenue, Orrell, but grew up in Netherton and went to school in Netherton. So it's great to be representing the areas where I was born and bred.
Excellent. That's great. And I think it's always, a lot of people talk about the importance of being from your local area because we know that sometimes you'll have politicians who might be parachuted in or they might represent an area but live somewhere else, etc. And I think that connection is important. I was speaking to an independent councillor, Adrian Owens, recently, who represented a different ward. He was in West Lancashire and he was an independent. But you are in what is called a unitary council, whereas Lancashire can be quite complicated. They've got like a different structure there. So how does a unitary council work?
Well, I actually joined the Labour Party when I lived in West Lancs, so they've gone back to 1983. So I know West Lancs, I know some of the councils actually in West Lancs. With the Unity Authority, we're responsible for everything. With West Lancs, they have like the housing, but the main service like education, adult social care is run by Lancashire County Council. Yeah. We're in Sefton as a metropolitan authority. We're responsible for all our services.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have so delegated so much, and we're responsible for all the services that's provided in the authority.
Yeah. So they have like a borough council and then a county council.
Yeah, West Lancs is a borough council. We're a metropolitan, and we are one of the largest metropolitan authorities in the country.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I know Bootle, it's a bit like the Bootle and Netherton Ward. It's a bit like an egg timer, isn't it, the way it's constructed? And Sefton itself is quite unusual because it's quite long, isn't it? It goes quite thin on the coast, and then it's almost like an egg timer again.
Yeah. I mean, there have been calls for Sefton to go part into Lancashire, but mainly from those councils up in Southport. But when there's been it's gone into the community, the general view, people want to stay part of Sefton. But I can understand where the Lancastrian comes into it. I mean, Tarleton, Hesketh Bank, closely aligned with Ormskirk, and then they'll say it's Southport. But Southport itself was a town in its own prior to Sefton being formed anyway. But it's a strange borough, Sefton.
Yeah, it is funny in terms of its shape, isn't it? And also the Bootle and Netherton Ward.
Yeah.
So is it true that you're retiring very soon or in the near future?
I've got to a point where, in the very near future, I've got to the point where I've just got... I know we're going to be looking at how to engage, get people involved in politics, but after 28 and a half years, it's somewhat... I think it's time to step down. I've become disillusioned because of local issues lately, and I feel sort of that it's time to walk away and put family first and myself.
Good on you, mate. And I think that certainly since COVID, there's been a lot of people, not just like councillors and people in the political realm, etc., who may have looked at their lives and thought, wait there, what's going on? What are the important things in life, and putting yourself and family first? I think
I have a busy job as well. I mean, I do have a day job and I've got managerial responsibilities. But it's going to be nice just to come home of an evening and not having to, to go out to meetings and also have weekends to myself.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you going to meetings in the evenings, dark evenings, and getting back quite late. So
I'm not going to miss that.
Good stuff. So we've already discussed it. You're in the Labour Party. So you're a Labour Party councillor for Bootle and Netherton Ward. But did you have any other responsibilities while you were working as a councillor?
Yeah, going back to when I first got elected, I was deputy chair of the housing committee because Sefton had its own housing committee at the time. This was before the Savini One Vision Housing was formed. So deputy chair of housing, and then I held the position as Labour Party spokesperson for social services, and I've held positions as over the period of time as audit and governance chair of audit and governance committee. I was once for a couple of years as chair of Children's Services Scrutiny Review, and then I moved on to audit and governance, and I was the chair of the board of Sefton New Directions, the healthcare company that Sefton set up in 2010. I was chair of the board from 2010, well, so 2012 up till to May this year.
Yeah. So you've had experience. Obviously, you've got another job, a day job, as it were. Yeah. You're doing the council responsibilities, but you've also got additional responsibilities on top of that as well. Now, I know that people talk about politicians' pay, and often they refer to politicians in Westminster. And I think Adrian Owens mentioned that, like, the pay for a county councillor is literally just a few £1,000s a year. Yeah. It can go up to, I think, 40,000 for council leader, but again, that's a relatively average professional wage in certain professions. And there's a bit of I think, an unfair label put on councillors, like the councillors are overpaid, etc., particularly local councillors. But the reality is they're not paid very much at all, are they?
No, Sefton councillors receive an annual allowance of 9,900. Yeah. Every councillor receives that. Obviously, if your old positions of special responsibility, then you get an increase, such as scrutiny chairs will receive half the 9,000, so it's 1.5. Yeah. Cabinet members receive, I think it's about 15,000 plus the 9,000. Outside boards, obviously, there's payments for people being on outside boards. But for a council, for the time that people put in, for the expense involved, just the basic allowance of a councillor is, of 9,000. You do an awful lot of work for that 9,000.
Yeah, and
that's before tax and insurance.
Yeah. I think as well as that, I mean, Adrian Owens mentioned it as well. Like you said, you'll get some councillors who really get stuck into it, and you'll have others who maybe are doing a little bit less or whatever to varying degrees. But he said it's very much a thing that you're passionate about and that you believe that you can help people over, and there's that element to it as well. But it's very hard, isn't it, to say to people, particularly in local government, oh, people are going in it for the money. It's definitely not that.
When I first got elected, I was unemployed. I was a voluntary welfare rights advisor with the TUC, and I was unemployed. So when I was first become a councillor, I was having to send my councillor's allowances to the Department of Works and Pensions. They were making the deductions from the income supporters at the time. So I didn't enter sort of, you were allowed to earn £20 per week, I think, at work, and if you were unemployed. So I certainly didn't enter politics for any financial gain. I entered politics because I wanted to represent people. And I've been involved in representing people for many years to the TUC. Again, in the trades councils and within the trade union movement, I've held lots of positions. So I certainly didn't come into politics for financial gain.
The drive to make things better. I mean, I've spoken to you a lot, just casual chats through the years about politics, etc. And it's clear that you're very passionate about improving people's lives locally. I think that shines through. I think if you lose that, I think we're going to discuss this in a minute, how difficult party discipline is, because I know that if you're an independent, there's less party discipline. How difficult have you found party discipline in terms of you want to help local people? Sometimes you have to toe the party line. They're not always compatible from an individual's perspective. How challenging is that?
I think sort of, you have to maintain discipline. A lot, though, I think sometimes the decisions could be, and rather than people whipped into making decisions, there are issues of conscience where people should be allowed to have a free vote. Yeah. And I think that's important, because you can't always sort of, you might have deep convictions you're whipped to attend a meeting and voting against something that you may feel strongly about. But I think, without discipline, I think, there's going to be a situation of anarchy. We've lost in Sefton some really good councillors. As of recent, we've lost some wonderful, excellent councillors because there've been issues with regards to challenging the leadership. So I've always been loyal to the party. I've always maintained the party whip. Though there's a lot which I disagree with, and I've disagreed with colleagues over Oral Mount Fields, the park, which is very close to where I live. I would never sort of go independent. There's been calls to me. I mean, as I said before, I'm resigning my position within the near future. I've become very sort of disillusioned. I also feel disenfranchised, but I certainly wouldn't go independent because the elected voted for a Labour councillor. Didn't vote for me. I mean, you did get a personal vote, but people voted Labour, so I would not go independent. And I'm not saying those that have gone independent are cheating the electorate. Far from it. People have different reasons. But I would not break the party whip, and I certainly would not go independent. I couldn't sort of live with that.
Yeah, I think if you stand as an independent, it's a bit different than if you become independent, kind of mid-term, as it were. Yeah. Something I've often struggled with is even in like trade unions. I'm involved in the NEU, the National Education Union, formerly the NUT and the ATL, and even just trying to get a little bit of a consensus amongst a few people can be very, very difficult. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in politics. To what extent do you say, right, I represent this party, yeah, there's whips, there's discipline, but at the same time, issues of conscience figure very highly in certain people's minds more than others, etc. But it's a very difficult thing, I think, to get right. And I think that's the thing that I would find most difficult if I went into, say, local governments, etc. I would find that very challenging. What do you think of the issues in Bootle that need to be resolved? You mentioned about the park recently. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but
yeah,
what would you say the long-term issues and also maybe the issues that have frustrated you?
Well, I mean, the long-term issues clearly are environmental, such as the port expansion and the road, the church road. How people can put up with the traffic every day that's go along there, and I think the environmental effects, pollution. I think the road is probably the biggest concern at the moment, environmental wise. Other than that, I'm looking at the cuts to austerity, and I know we're going to come on to austerity later on, but I think trying to support vulnerable communities when you've got likes of nearly £250 million cut from your budget since 2010 is difficult. But I think community issues are very important. I think the people around the rim roads and church roads, I think that was a main problem at the moment that needs to be addressed. But I think we've probably missed the boat with that one. In that they were, with the benefit of hindsight, we had the Gyro Bank container base that was now Ford. So they had the container base there. There's the rail routes. Maybe a lot of traffic could have been brought containers through the railways. I know some freight can't be took on rail, so you're always going to need sort of wagons and that. But then a tunnel under the Rimrose Valley would have been an option, but that was not included in the original sort of. It's either Church Road or Rimrose Valley, and I think we should have gone for pressing for a tunnel, because if it was down the southeast, we'd have got a tunnel. Yeah, I think we should have been pressing for a tunnel, some years back. And I think to raise it now is a bit sort of shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. We should have gone for the tunnel straight away. We should have been pressing for that. So I think Rimrose, but of course then got the local issues. I mean, Oral Mount. I mean, that was clearly a major issue for the people around here. I don't think it was given the credence that it should have been by the rest of the other ward councillors, because they didn't know the depth of the feeling. I lived here. I know the depth of feeling from obviously neighbours and close friends and party members who have known for many years, who were saying to me, what are you doing about this? Why are you supporting this? And what happens then is, I remember when some years back, we always said that when that became the Oral Hub, we said that we'll always retain this because it's a green lung in the area. During lockdown, people actually use it an awful lot. Did myself and my wife. It's okay, you've got a garden, so you're a lot fortunate than some people, but you really need that exercise. And of course, you had the opposing view, well, it's only used for dog walkers. Well, to me, that's, it's irrelevant. There's a facility there that we could, bring back into community use. There's a park, which is a green lung. And I think, Labour colleagues didn't understand the depth of feeling towards it. And a lot of issues around that, particularly, again, working with individuals. Well, when you've worked at the Trades Council, you work with people from other parties anyway, different opinions, and you get things done through consensus. I think because of some of the individuals that were involved in the campaign to keep the fields open, people that stood against the Labour Party, I think that sort of clouds people's views about engaging with them. And I know prior to the election in 2021, I'd come under a lot of hostility from people involved in the campaign to keep the park open. Well, not necessarily people who campaign involved, but associates of people. But then that's politics, and you get used to that. And I think the only way to defeat people is by seeing to be doing things. And one of the things that was being labelled all the time, Labour aren't listening. I mean, you had a banner up saying local Labour councillors aren't listening. Well, I was, and I decided to go meet with the community members. I haven't met with them. I was made more aware of the depth of feeling. And it's okay to say, okay, we're going to consult. We hadn't consulted. It was a sham consultation with 6 houses during lockdown. That's no way to consult with people. So I actually met with individuals, and some Labour colleagues were not prepared to meet with them. And I think that goes back to sort of the individuals. Well, they've attacked us in social media, and I accept that. But the local government code of conduct actually says, and the Labour Party will say, engage with communities, and also if you're not there, people are going to say, well, where's the Labour Party? If you are there, you can't level that to the Labour Party aren't interested. So I decided I needed to meet with the residents, and having listened to them, and I also made inquiries of my own regards to the environmental aspect around 4G pitches and risk to children. I wasn't convinced that there was enough report. In fact, I didn't see any reports with regards to 4G. They'd refer to, well, Sport England say it's okay. Well, you read reports from like Holland that says it's not. So I wanted something more definitive. And at the end of the day, I got elected by the community. I know this is just a small part of the ward, but it's a part of the ward where I live. My friends and neighbours live, and they're saying to me they don't want it. I'm not going to turn around and say, okay, well, you don't want it, but I've heard what you say. Let's just have the consultation, because you need to be working with the community and getting their community views across. And that's what I did. And since then, and the consultation come back, and people said to me, well, your support was it's been seen to be correct in that the consultation. They come back 49. I mean, I dispute that, because there was a 3,000 petition signed, so I can't see where they got the 49 from. I'm not saying that that is it's been lies, but I just find that I'd like to see the real evidence of how that consultation reached that 49. At the end of the day, it hasn't gone through, and my support for the residents has been acknowledged by them, and I can resign knowing I've done the right thing. When I say resign, I feel since my support for All Mount, I've been somewhat disenfranchised, because nobody wants to speak to you. You don't get any communications, and
so this is in the Labour Party.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to probably reinsert these at the start, but just to talk about the expansion of the port, just so the listeners know exactly what the local issue is. Liverpool's got a very big free port, or Bootle's got a very big free port,
yeah.
And they're looking to expand that even further. And there's a lot of lorry traffic which would be required to go through some residential areas. And you're either going to have to expand an already very busy road, or use a green belt, the Rimrose Valley, to go through there to get all of this traffic to and from the port. And what you're saying is the underground tunnel option wasn't considered well enough in the initial plans for that. Is that what your main beef was, that wasn't considered enough?
Well, a number of people have actually said that. We've raised this. We were asking about a tunnel. It wasn't mentioned initially when we were given the options of tunnel or Rimrose. Rimrose or Church Road. There was no. We didn't argue for a third option then. or even when it was first muted, years back, when it was first, it was first muted about port expansion and obviously where's the traffic going to go to. I think there's a lot of things could have been done. I think, as I say, the rail structure, we could have, looked at opening railway lines, but I think a tunnel, would have been would have saved the Ribnose Valley, would have took the traffic away. But I think that we've lost that one.
Yeah, I think I went up to Liverpool Cathedral, the top of Liverpool Cathedral, about 15 years ago. And one of the things I got is if you look to the north of the city, it's very urban. Yeah. And when you look to the south, there's lots of parks. And to take away the Rimrose Valley from that area of just north of Bootle, and to take away Orrelman Park, which is just opposite, there's a park down there, they're quite a walk away. And you're already taking away a lot of green space from quite underprivileged areas, and to do more of that without proper consultation. So you were talking about the port expansion, you thought there were big issues with that. Orrelman Park, you wanted to turn it into 4G pitches, etc. A lot of local opposition. You then went against the party line, as it were, and said...
Well, it wasn't necessarily the party line, but I think there was a reluctance to engage with the people who were campaigning against the being turned into a 4G pitch, because they campaigned against the Labour Party, stood as independents. Again, I'd made the point that because at one point there was a rumour that went round saying that the Labour Party were not going to engage with the residents at all. And that was basically it transpired to be incorrect. It was not it was actually untrue. There was no sort of rule that we're not going to engage with them. But I think I know there was residents saying to me, well, councillors aren't getting back to them, they're not responding, I'm the only one that does. And actually it's not true, because other councillors were, and as myself and the Councillor Paul Tweed attended a meeting. If you give people an opportunity to attack you, then they will do. And I think again, going back to working with being a member of the trades councils over years, when you work with people with other organisations, socialist workers, Communist Party members, you work together for it and get a consensus. You can't turn around and say, well, actually, you're not a Labour Party member, so I'm not prepared to work with you. You've stood against the Labour Party, I'm not prepared to work with you. You've got to be seen to be doing things. And as the local government code of conduct says, you've got to represent people even if they don't even vote for you. I gave a commitment when I first got elected that I'd be accessible at all times, and I also, one of the frustrating things about it is I had to defend myself as well, because I'd met the residents and they asked me when the consultation was going to start, and I said, I honestly don't know. 2 weeks later it was in the press. And I had residents at my door saying it was in the press, you've lied to us, you must have known about it, and I genuinely didn't know. I had to release a statement saying I was wholly unaware of the consultation. And then I had to wait for officers to explain, we were going to brief you, but we got tied down with the Ofsted report and all this. And I didn't blame the officers, I just said, well, other people must have known, other councillors must have known about it. But when you've got a situation like that, and residents are looking to council support them, and then they find something else, and you having to go on social media to explain, I didn't know, it leaves a very sour taste in the mouth, and you think, what's going on here? Am I, being deliberately sort of kept out the loop?
Yeah. So, just also on those campaigns, the people who were concerned about the road expansion, the port expansion, it wasn't that they didn't want it to happen, they just wanted it to be done differently. The people with the 4G football pitches locally, great. Don't be building them on the local park. There's lots of brownfield sites around here. They were the main concerns. Now, one of the big issues in Bootle going back through history has always been, it's basically I wouldn't call it a one-party state, because people are voting for that party repeatedly, but do you think when people are in position for long periods of time, there just becomes a little bit of almost like an arrogance and a swagger that develops among people, that we don't need to be as engaging with the public as in other areas? Is that your reading of it?
I think that's to the point, and I think sadly, I think we've let people down locally. I think we've as regards when it's left to activists to campaign on issues, and then all we're doing is basically challenging it in the ballot box, saying, well, this is not right. This shouldn't be a situation where you've got community activists running the agenda. and that's what's been going on. We should be challenging and out there. And I know some of them. Some of the comments, some of that I experienced, and mine were mild compared to what some were really nasty. And I think, I appreciate where people may not want to work with them because of some of the comments that's been made, but it is what it is, and you're elected, and then you've got to be seen to do things, and you're only giving people ammunition by not actually and seen to be active in the community. I'm not saying that councillors aren't, because councillors do lots of work, but when you've got something as high profile as like Church Road, and you've got likes of Ormond Park, and they're saying Labour councillors aren't interested in not getting involved, and there's one school of thought, well, actually, and this has been said to me by a few people, well, we're not going to lose the ward, are we? We could lose 300 or 400 votes. But when you've got, when you lose 300 or 400 votes in a ward, then that's 300 or 400 votes that have got to be won back. You can't just dismiss them. And you can't just turn around and dismiss party elected, which is what you're doing. So you have to sort of try and win those votes back. And you win them back by engaging with people, whether you want to work them or not. You have to engage them, and that's over time. I've had to work with some people who've been very, who've attacked me on social media. But the way to defeat people is by not just the ballot box, but through arguments on the street, on the doorstep.
Yeah, what you just described there almost is the whole theory and underpinning of democracy. There's elections, but then there's the work between elections, engaging with people. Yeah. Some of them might be quite volatile. Some of them might not speak to you in a way that you find, comfortable. But that's democracy. That's the cut and thrust of it all. And you do need to engage with all members of the community. And I suppose that's how it should be done. But it must be very frustrating. And we're going to come in a minute. I might want to move on to it now. But what have been the biggest challenges and difficulties of being a councillor? And we might link that to austerity. What have you found the rewards of it all, the biggest rewards and the biggest challenges?
I think the rewards is the satisfaction of helping people and look at sort of casework. I'm not sort of blowing my own trumpet because other councillors have referred social security cases to me where I've picked up social security claims and done appeals. I utilise what I do, like welfare law, and I actually fill in people's welfare benefit forms. I represent people at social security appeal tribunals. That's not many councillors do that. So I'm doing it. I'm going above and beyond what's expected of a councillor, but it's helping my constituents and giving them a better quality of life by getting an increased benefits and things like that. To me, it makes it all worthwhile, and people remember that. It's something where sometimes you make a rod for your own back because you end up getting lots of cases. And as I say, the councillors referred things to me. I've got this social security matter. Can you deal with this? Can you deal with that? And you feel somewhat then obliged to do it. But the casework has been great. Getting people, even just getting people housed, getting people into school where they've been refused a school place, it is great. And just supporting individuals. I think it's what got me involved in politics to benefit the community. To things that do to benefit the community, and you can help some individual families. Then that's great. I think the challenges. I think all councillors will face hostility at some time in the political career. You will get hostility from residents. Sometimes if people only remember the things that you only remember things that you don't do for them. They don't remember things that you do. But I think some of the challenges, again, the biggest challenge for me in all the time I've been a councillor was Ormond Park, and I've been a councillor for 28 and a half years. That was the biggest challenge for me. In sort of, I felt that I was having to sort of, I felt actually on my own. There was at one point where I was being subject to abuse on social media, where I fill in an online form for the local government association about councillors and the council safety, and I'm saying, well, this has happened to me now. I'm being abused on social media, but getting things shouted at when I'm out because you're not seen to supporting people, and then so you think this is going on now, and then that was the biggest challenge was that I've never felt I've had to sort of not taken sides, but it was like sort of as if I had took sides. Within the past, there seemed to be a united approach to any issues like the landfill, that was they tried to get a landfill, not far from where I live. The issues over the closure of Roberts County School and the opening of Springwell, we had our, trying to convince the community that we were going to build a better school and better facilities. Netherton Park Community Centre, when that was getting closed, and we promised we'd have a new community centre. So initial challenges there, but it was a unified front, and we delivered on what we'd said, and we got state-of-the-art, schools, state-of-the-art community centre. But I felt that Ormond Park, to me, I just felt it was like for the first time in 28 and a half years, I was taking sides, and it was not, supporting the community, and I felt as if that to me was a big challenge, because I think the Labour Party were actually letting the community down.
It's almost like, that big issue, it was like, well, wait there, there's no unity on this issue because there's no attempt at unity from the officials, etc. So I feel compelled to go down that path.
Yeah.
But good on you for holding to your own. I mean, I think Edwin Burke, who famous traditional conservative, always said that sometimes your conscience, you have to go with your conscience as an elected official. I think that's, ultimately the big issue in politics. To what extent do you go with your conscience? To what extent do you go with the government structure or the local community? Very, very difficult decision. You said earlier about austerity, 250 million being cut. How hard was that on the front line?
Well, when you're having to close children's centres and family centres, from my day job, I mean, I do work, and I was working with the family centres and children's centres, and next minute you're getting told that they're closing because we can't afford to keep them open. So then, you're trying to or merge centres. To me, there should be a family centre in every community, not just one where we merge one and you've got to, go travel somewhere. I think adult social care, we haven't got any sort of AMI homes in Sefton. They're all private. Over the years, since I've been a councillor, we've closed children's homes down. We've closed.
What's an AMI home?
Elderly mentally infirm.
Yeah.
And we've closed children's homes down over the years. And I think it just having to impose cuts, savage cuts, and trying to we've had to increase the council tax, year on, so that we can make savings and put in adult social care, more money into adult social care. I think just that the threat of redundancies, again, it's frightening when you think, people are going to lose your jobs, and you may have to sort of be, overseeing, the redundancy situation. But austerity it's been savage what we've actually lost.
Yeah, I think the national picture as well. I think since 2010, obviously we had the credit crunch. I think since 2010 we had 5 years of austerity, which then the Conservative Party moved away from and said that was wrong. We've then had Brexit, which has kind of warped the Conservative Party almost into like a UKIP Brexit party type thing. And then obviously we've had the impact of COVID. And then because of the impact of Brexit, I think you've had Johnson and Truss. Now austerity's back on the table. Unbelievable economic mismanagement, and we may well come through the darker national picture, but it's almost like the local governments are just almost the victims on the front line, having to put up with all this nonsense, and it's causing real damage on the front line. I mean, the threat of more austerity, where can councils cut now? They're cut to the bone already. Surgeons are cut to the bone. The NHS is in crisis. It really is a terrible, terrible time to hear the austerity word mentioned again, and you've seen it on the front line as well.
I think one of the, food banks, when I first got elected, there was no such thing as food banks. I mean, when I was involved in West Lancs Labour Party, go back to the early 80s, we had food cooperatives because unemployment in Skelmersdale, where I live, was 1 in 10. It was actually 1 in 4. It was at the UB40 at 1 in 10, but Skelmersdale unemployment was at 1 in 4. So we set up food cooperatives to support families. So that wasn't, food cooperatives, people would pay 50p and get a lot of fruit and veg, things like that. So food banks were not not a new concept when you've worked in an area of high unemployment, which Skelmersdale was decimated by the Tory governments of the day. It promised so much and then decimated all the big industries till the 70s and the 80s. Hundreds, thousands of building workers, and a lot of building workers were unemployed in Skelmersdale. So we set up food coffers, again, myself from the Labour Party, and working with the Communist Party of Great Britain and through the trades councils. So food banks were not new, but they were, when I got elected in Sefton, there wasn't any. And to see them now, and to see like warm hubs, it's just unbelievable what's actually going on. I think people now start to realise as well, about Brexit and the loss of revenue from Europe. I mean, you've only got like PPE. You could have got lots of PPE from Europe initially. All the problems around getting PPE. They didn't go to Europe for PPE. They go to Turkey and PPE wasn't getting promised. Tons, we didn't get it. Going to China, the PPE was available in Europe. But people are now seeing that the loss. I mean, Southport P was built through European money. Through the City Challenge, and Bootle were able to get money in, which were able to build Southport Wharf, the seafront. So community benefits up in Southport have been through the European, funding, and all that's now, is in the past. So I think people now will start to realise that Brexit is not just about sort of the free movements of labour. It's a lot more about, it's impacting on our daily living altogether.
Yeah, I read this morning that our GDP is now 70% of Germany's, and that just before, I don't know if it was before the Brexit vote, it was 90%. But that 20% cut to the overall economy, that's impacting right across the country.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can cut. I mean, I just hope we can get beyond this Brexit thing, and, within a generation, that kind of Brexit fundamentalism is just put to the side and we can move forward again rationally, because there's too many negative consequences of it. I still think we're very much in the thick of it. And just going back to the local issues again, a lot of councillors, they deal with a lot of like casework. That's the day-to-day stuff, which is like an issue, someone comes to you with a problem, etc. And we'll talk about how people can get involved more in politics, but how difficult is it in a council like Sefton, where you've got huge differences in the relative wealth of different areas? I mean, you represent a ward which is underprivileged. How difficult is it sometimes working with other people who represent much different areas? How do you get around that?
I think it was a lot more difficult when we weren't in control, because then you've got you had the Conservatives. It was no control up until 2012. But you'd had periods where he was like Conservative were the largest party, Lib Dem's largest party. I mean, when I first got elected, there was only 18 Labour councils. I think there's now 46. And that was just like with the councils were actually in Bootle, and because we had 3 for Netherton, 3 for Oral wards. And it was difficult then because, you saw the poverty that was going on in the deprivation within sort of South Sefton wards. And you're trying to appeal to people that lived in affluent areas, to not cut this and not cut that. I'm not saying, I know there's the many Liberal Democrats and Conservative councils that are very sort of, I've worked over periods of time, and they've, prepared to listen and not say they all don't care, because that would be wrong, because there's some councils that really do care about Sefton per se. But I think sort of when you've got likes of the Tory government bringing policies that impact on local communities, appealing to sort of Tory and Lib Dem councils when you had the coalition against sort of, the austerity and cuts, appealing to them to support, the wards in Bootle. You're not going to get that when they're just put them through national politics locally. As regards, casework, I mean, as I say, casework tends to come through. Well, we used to have a lot of surgeries, whole surgeries, weekly surgeries before lockdown. Now, because of the hybrids working and not many surgeries are being up and running again, but most of the casework now tends to come through the group office or through emails, where people, a lot of people have access to the internet. Not everyone, or you get word of mouth. People ring up, or can you get an inquiry, can you ring someone, or friends and family and friends, or they'll say, Joe, I've been asked, can you contact this person? So there used to be the surgeries in the past, but surgeries tend to have dwindled. When I first got elected, one of the big concerns at the time was housing issues and cockroach infestation. We had lots and lots of inquiries over people who happen to live in houses that are infested with cockroaches. Over several years that we don't get any inquiries anymore. A lot of it now tends to be anti-sus behaviour, and there where I feel, I feel so frustrated when you've got people who are having to suffer with anti-sus behaviour. They've got, they've got like sort of getting abusive behaviour from neighbours, and what I'm seeing is that and again is that the families that are the victims having to move, and the perpetrators are staying put. So to me, anti-sus behaviour is one of it continues to still be one of the main sources of inquiries that I actually receive. Whether it's sort of someone playing loud music or through all hours of the night, it's impacting on people's health and well-being. When you speak to councils from likes of other affluent wards, they don't seem to have the same sort of. Theirs are more like sort of issues around sort of planning and their planning objections and things like that. They don't seem to have the same problems with them. They must have. There must be issues, but they don't think that it's impacted as much as people in that as they are in South Sefton wards, where you've got anti-sus behaviour. You have issues with drugs and things like that, and trying to appeal to people. Look, is to understand what's going on in South Sefton is sometimes difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. We'll just draw to a close now, and I know you've got another meeting soon, and thanks for giving me your valuable time. But just very finally, how would you say people could get more involved in local politics? I mean, people can speak to the local councillors to do with casework and issues of local concern.
I think over the last 30 years, I think we've lost, as a trade union member, then the Labour Party was seen as a political arm of the trade union movement. It's clearly not seen as that now. By many people, including myself. I think we're letting the trade unions down. And, you sort of, and I'm talking about at a national level, letting the trade union movement down. I think sort of, you cut your teeth in the trade union movement and you go into local politics or through the trades councils. The unemployed centres over time has been noted. The unemployed centres have gone. Trades councils are very redundant, and that would be the natural form of progression. Or young Labour Party Young Socialist, and or Fabian societies, and students have the opportunity to get involved. But then you would say, well, actually, students, because they're not necessarily representing sort of the grassroots, and I think that grassroots input has gone. And if you're not engaged, getting people involved in trade unions, they're not less likely to get involved in community politics. So it tends to be speaking to individuals. There's no recruitment drives to get people involved. I would just say, if you are concerned about what's going on, and you feel very strongly, then join a party, whether it's the Labour Party, whether it's the Greens, or whatever issues you feel that the party represents your views, then you do join and get involved, and then become a party activist. To get involved in politics, obviously, to be a party activist, to get known, to get around, get onto the constituencies, to do things around the wards, is a way of getting yourself sort of get to know the area. Because I don't think people should just be parachuted in. You need to know the area, preferably live in the ward, but it's not really essential. It does help, but get involved in community politics. Again, the issues like we used to have home watch schemes, you have community centres. A lot have all gone now because of austerity and all that. We've lost all these sorts of community, like the neighbours action groups, all things like that have gone. Like a lot when people, local communities could source European funding. Again, people got involved, and people get sort of really want to do more. Then you want to get more involved, and then you should encourage that. You should, not dissuade people from getting involved. Like some people from the Oral Mount, some of the residents who were campaigning against the Labour Party were ex-Labour Party members themselves and left because of being disillusioned. But to get involved, you need to be sort of seen. I think preferably be active at that grassroots level, community activists, get involved locally. Hopefully, then you get an interest and get onto the panel and get selected. But that's the only. I think we've lost the other routes. The natural progression route would be the trade union movement into the Labour Party. I think that's been dwindled down over years.
Thanks very much for your time, Bobby. Very from the heart there, and I think that what you said, particularly about your decision to stand down as a councillor, it's obviously been a very tough one after all these years of service, but you just feel like it's the right time for you to spend more time with your family, and just to wish you the very best moving forward. And well done as well for bringing your principles front and centre. I think that takes a lot of...
Can I just say, I'm not due for election until 2024, so I'd have had 30 years on the council at the time, but I've become so disillusioned and I feel disenfranchised because of the support I gave locally. And I just think, I just, why bother, staying around now for another 18 months when, as I decided, to go now, and it is the right thing for me. I say I've got a day job which is very demanding, and I try enjoy, and I get more enjoyment out of casework from my day job than do as a council now, and that's when you get to that point, it's time to go. But when I first got elected, I didn't expect to be on the council 28 and a half years later on, and maybe thought 8 years. And I think sort of, maybe some things that maybe, like with magistrates, whether they should retire at a certain age, and because I think the longest you are in office, I think, there are risks that you become sort of institutionalised, let's say.
Yeah, I understand that. So what you're saying is it's certainly not an anti-politics message, it's certainly not an anti-Labour Party message, but what you're saying is people need to engage with the communities.
Yeah.
People need more of a sense of unity locally, and when we lose that for whatever reason, we're losing our chief purpose. And well, thanks very much for your time. I know you've got another meeting soon, and thanks for being so open and honest. And I think it takes a lot of credit as well, the decisions you've made recently and right through your career. So thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, Tim.
Cheers. Hiya, folks. Just a little post note. Bobby Brennan resigned on October the 30th, 2022, after 28 and a half years